Yeah, just do a quick introduce that this is the show and tell.
Oh, okay.
Who you are. Sure.
All right. My name's Wilbur, and we are starting our show and tell. So I have just a couple of simple backdrop sites that I've worked on. I'll start with this one. This is just really an easy one. I just needed kind of a placeholder, so I initially installed the Borg site theme, and I thought, oh, easy enough. And then actually during the demonstration, I sub-themed Basis and built this. So that's just how easy it is. So, so then it's already been a couple of months ago, I built a website. Oh, maybe I have to start this. My local Amnesty International group. You guys probably can't see that terminal. So I picked up a theme that was called Mini CSS. And what I liked about it, it was very minimal theme and really relatively simple. I've been really obsessed with performance. I do a lot of maintenance stuff at my day job on Drupal sites, and we're always trying to push performance and using, I've been doing a lot of stuff with CSS and JS aggregation and the advanced aggregation module. And what I was really impressed with is that with Backdrop, the speed and performance measures we get are just off the charts right away. So it's been awesome. So I really wanted to make really a simple kind of site for Amnesty here, and I used that mini CSS theme, and I was just able to super exciting. But what I liked about this was that it was really a simple theme, and it just gave me the building blocks that I needed, and I wanted to keep this site really crisp and clean. And I was able to do that with Backdrop. This is just running on my local machine, and I was playing with the hero image layouts to do that. So these are not Drupal 7 themes. That'll be, or Drupal 7 websites that are converted. These were just built directly. And so that's the next thing that'll dig in on these. So let's see if we can look at this in mobile quick. That's the other nice thing, is that all these themes are built for mobile right away. We're ready to go with them. So, so yeah, that's what I have. Anybody else want to come up and show something?
I will show mine. You want to just, if you show yours, I can do mine on your computer.
You can just use mine here if you want.
I can. Sure.
You want to plug in?
Actually, we're having,
Okay, he has.
So first of all, I asked Wilbur to present some sites, and he said they're super basic. And I said, he's just started right recently. And I said, that's okay. Let's show the realm. I mean, these are mostly things you've been experimenting with, right? Like on the car drive. Didn't you say you built one of those on the car ride to Chicago?
Back.
And back, yeah.
Yep. So both of those sites, I have 8 hours each. Okay, it's like pretty awesome.
So these are sites that we've put substantially more effort into, and hopefully it shows. I'll show a couple quickly of the sites we've been working on, and talk just quickly. Again, this is a local nonprofit. Got to get used to the trackpad here. SPCLC. They again came to us. They really like our content's fine, functionality's fine, we just hate our theme, just make us a new theme in Drupal 7. And I looked at their, they had a bunch of nodes, pretty simple stuff, really just nothing very complicated, and said, well, I just don't feel comfortable rebuilding your site in Drupal 7, putting effort into a new theme. I think we can do a pretty clean upgrade. And this was the site where we did like the basic. I think there is kind of I thought there was kind of a news feature, and this had some content going back a while. And, it might have had a couple hundred nodes, maybe, of the news type, but they were very simple news types. So they all imported pretty cleanly. I think we might not have made a real big effort on like some taxonomy or maybe menus, like we didn't get the menus imported, but it was like, well, I can rebuild the menus in 20 minutes. So I'm just not going to worry about it. We did I'm trying to think, we did a completely custom theme, and I don't remember, and I don't have my login credentials right here. I don't remember which theme, we did a sub theme off of, I can't remember if we just did it off of Basis or if we went, I know I've experimented with sort of like a Bootstrap Lite sort of theme, and I can't remember which we ended up landing on for this. So this was really simple, slightly more, well, this was a Riverton.org. This client came to us, well, what's going on? Did I type it in the wrong place?
Look at your tabs on the bottom too.
Okay, there it is. Yep, I got it. I somehow switched us up. So this client came to us almost the same time with also a similarly pretty simple site. The old version was. It got a little more complicated, but the content wasn't bad. And in fact, we didn't even try to upgrade this one because the amount of content was so small, and the client was like basically rewriting a lot of the content anyways, that despite the fact they had an existing site, and their thought was we're just going to retheme our existing site. We said, well, let's rebuild it in Drupal. We'll build you a brand new theme. And we basically rebuilt the content. I think we copied and pasted a few nodes and then had them edited. It just wasn't a big deal. This one did, but our designer got a little ambitious with this one because their site was pretty simple before, but there was some complicated things we wanted to display. It's a co-op board that manages seven properties. And we wanted, it's all student housing near the University of Minnesota here. And ideally, students want to be able to come browse these different properties and see sort of detailed info. Each building has different floor plan or different size rooms, and each different size rooms have different floor plans. And so they didn't have, they weren't using their old site as much as they could have, which is why it was so simple. But we're like, we can display, give you pretty fine-grained control to allow students to say, go to the chateau. Okay, I'm at the chateau. I've got a little slideshow of the chateau. I'm interested in a 2-bedroom apartment. Actually, this is probably not a good example because at the chateau, everything has just one floor plan. So, I can pick, but I can pick a room size, and then there's a floor plan, and I see all that information. On a more complicated property, if we go over to the communities, which one? Brook, I think, is one of the more complicated ones. If we go to Brook and we look at the 1-bedroom, they actually have 3 different floor plans. So the user is able to pick 1 bedroom and then able to switch between these different floor plans and see the unique floor plan, and if there's any difference in price or details, that shows up there. This was something at the time, I had used a module in Drupal called Views Field Views. Something like that. I think it's Views Field Views was the name of the module, and it allows you to create a views field that is another view. So you could create, in theory, for this, we could have created a view of the layouts and then created another view of the types of bedrooms and embedded the view of the layouts within the view of the sizes. But that module wasn't available at the time.
ended up being available like 2 weeks later.
Not
I was
quite,
like,
not
"No,
quite, but
it's like,
it,
but I need it now. I'm like, oh.
I asked Jen about it, like what her strategy would be, and she's like, "Oh, I'm surprised that it's imported because I think you said you use it on occasion."
Yeah.
And she's, I put in a request, and I have done this. I've requested a few modules be ported, and some of them have been ported pretty quickly. Others, like 2 months later, I'll see a note that somebody's ported this module. In this one, I created a note. There's on GitHub, we have a topic where you can request a module to be ported, and there are modules being ported, I would say weekly. It's like almost every week a new module gets ported to Backdrop from Drupal. And there are some people in the Backdrop community that like to just, or will do, especially a high level like port, they might not get into all the details and really debug it. But if you say, I want this module for Backdrop, they'll like do the quick initial port, share it, and then wait for you to sort of test it and give them feedback. I did not get an immediate response with the views field views. I have the benefit of having David right over here, who is skilled at writing custom code. So we ended up solving this problem. And this isn't a great example in terms of like Backdrop's capacity, because we ended up doing some pretty complicated custom code and SQL queries and creating this on the fly. But about the time we were finishing with this project, Jen posts on GitHub, "Oh, I need views field views now." and she said, I'm gonna, and this was funny because I think you said, I'm gonna import it report it the next week. And about 2 hours later, somebody else had already ported it.
Actually, I started already. Oh. Nice.
And then somebody else just jumped in and ported it for you. And I still haven't actually tried to use that module in Backdrop.
I'm using it.
Okay.
Working for me.
But I part of sharing that story is that this is the kind of thing that you can run into, right? Where like, okay, I would have known how I'm going to solve this problem in Drupal. I go out looking for the module. It's not there. I could try to port it myself. I could wait, ask somebody else to port it, which I did. Or in this case, we ended up going towards a more complicated solution. But this would be easier to do today than, and we only built this 6 months ago, so this wasn't a long time ago. But, I don't know that there's anything else special to show about this site or.
Web forms.
Yeah, this is using the web form module, just with, elaborate theming. Nothing too crazy there. The same thing. I don't know if we figured out there. This mosaic was a little bit tricky to theme, but, it wasn't a little, because I hadn't quite done something like that before, but it wasn't too bad. I'm trying to think if there were any other modules that we had to update. Like, I think the Instagram module was broken. David, didn't we have to submit some patches to get that working? Do you remember? You remember. That's okay. So, but that kind of thing happens from time to time. I feel like I've been pretty lucky in terms of when I report bugs and problems in modules, that very often they get fixed pretty quickly. Yeah, I think that's all I need to show today. So, do you want to show one or two?
All right, sure. Can I use your computer too, Wilbur?
Yep.
All right. This is always, you put someone else's computer in front of you, and it's amazing how computer people can't work with a computer that's not their own. Okay, let's see. All right, if you have ever Googled how to cook a filet mignon, you might have landed on this website. It's pretty funny. This is a website that I inherited. I think it was pretty early in the Drupal 7 cycle. It had recently been updated to Drupal 7. And I've been using a theme that was no longer maintained. And the current site owner was frustrated with how some of the theme behaved. And so we patched it up and kind of kept it going for a really long time. And then I think it was last year, maybe 2 years ago, he came to me and said, okay, I've had it with this theme. I want a new one. And so it was the same thing as Tim, where you have someone with a perfectly fine set of content in Drupal 7. They come to you wanting a new theme. And then you can say, well, we could do a new theme, or we could also, do an update on some of the backend stuff too. And he wasn't super motivated by all of the things I tried to tell him about that he would get with Backdrop. I'm like, oh, it's going to be faster, and it's going to be this, and it's going to be that. And he's like, but is it going to be pretty? And I was like, well, maybe. And he didn't really want to hire a custom designer. He didn't have a huge budget. He was like, I don't know, that might sound like it might be expensive. And so I unleashed him on Theme Forest and told him to look at HTML templates and see if there was anything there he liked. And he loved it because he has a recipe website. They had a recipe category. They had hundreds of recipe themes available. And he found this one. He was like, I love it. Let's do it. Make it green. It came in like 5 colors or something. He's like, make it green and make it like this. So he did all of his own photography because he's actually a chef. He made his own videos, did his own photography, got me pictures of everything I needed. And he picked this particular theme that has a bunch of really fancy behaviors on things. So it has like, fancy little star ratings on things that have ratings. Techniques have like little hearts on stuff. And then videos have like a overlay shimmery thing. So this is the kind of stuff that like if I'd had to build myself, probably would have taken a really long time. And if you get something like this from a static HTML template, all of the CSS and JavaScript is already written and assembled for you. And so I didn't have to have any designer in sometimes you're like, oh, I want this thing the other way. And the designer's like, no, you can't have it that way. And I'm like, but the client really wants it. And then you have to like kind of argue with him about aesthetic. I didn't have to do that. And whatever he wanted, he got. And all the little bells and whistles are here. I did that thing too. Let's see. He had some pretty crazy ideas about data-rich content, in particular in the meal kit comparison section. So there's a whole bunch of new things that you can have like delivered to your door now, like Freshly and I don't know, whatever they are, Sun Basket, Purple Carrot, Hello Fresh, Green Chef, Fresh and Lean. Like there's so many meal kits. And because he's a chef, he's like, oh, this is great. I'm going to order one of every one of these boxes and I'm going to rank them on food quality, taste, aesthetic, whether my kids will eat it or not, if it comes with special options like gluten-free or vegan. And that way people will come to my website to figure out which meal kit they should order for them. And so he spent a lot of time ordering all of these things, trying all of the meals, rating all of the recipes, showing you what he thought of them, and a whole bunch of different ways where he's got fields for everything. I was like, how much does it cost? Like, how good is it? How simple is it to make? Is there a variety? Will your kids eat it? And he gave them all final scores so that you can do a comparison of all of these things. And this is the kind of thing that would have been a little hard to do on WordPress, just because you would have had to add fields for all of the things that he wanted to record about each product. So here he's got like, pros sections, a con section. With cost, there's always a chart because you can usually figure out like how many people, how often do you want it, different varieties. And so we're using like a table field here. I think we ported that module for this site. And then there's a whole bunch of different, like all of these fields are different text areas where we like magically insert the title into the field label. So it's like one content type where you're like, what is the name of the thing? And you're like purple carrot. And then it's like, okay, here's the purple carrot, this purple carrot, that purple carrot, the other. And so rather than having to worry about like custom theming all of those things, we just wrote a thing that would, for every one of these things, it would take the first thing and stick it in everywhere, which is pretty cool. We use that on another one of his sites now too. So that was kind of neat. Let's see. There's some other stuff he's got going on here. So the starter is a blog. Oh, his recipes. His recipes get a whole bunch of Google traffic, which is why I mentioned if you do a Google search, you might find him. And he had a website that included recipes and techniques. So there's like, here's a recipe for cooking filet mignon, and here's the technique you use when applying it. So you can have a technique like how to julienne that will be referenced from 18 different recipes. So any recipe that julienne carrots, julienne potatoes, julienne whatever, here's how to julienne. And so he wanted to make sure he had this interrelated content so that people who were watching one thing could figure out how to get to another. That's also something that's really hard to do on something like WordPress. So I think that Backdrop/Drupal was the right choice for him at the time. And he's so far been pretty happy with it. So again, there's a whole bunch of different view modes on this site too. Like this, I think is called a preview where it's got like a big image with a little star rating over the top. And then there's like a smaller one. There's like a sidebar display. There's like a grid view. Like this is the recipes overview page, but I think if you went to like hamburgers, there would be hamburger recipes. Let's see. So yeah, here's a teaser. So there's just so many different ways to display the same content. We leveraged view modes really heavily here, which is also something that was pretty easy to do in Backdrop, which I really appreciated. Oh, and another thing that I really loved is that in terms of taking the static HTML template and turning it into a backdrop theme, this template, I don't know if they're all written this well, but it was, every little element had like a parent level class. So I could just take the parent level class and stick it in a view, or take the parent level class and stick it in a block. And the themes would just kind of like snap together on it. And it was so refreshing where I'm just like, wow. Like usually Drupal's markup like gets in the way of everything. And if you try and do that, there's like divs everywhere and you can't get the thing right where you want it. But I felt with Backdrop, because you have the ability to add classes at so many different layers, particularly in blocks and layouts, I was able to customize the markup exactly the way I needed it without doing a ton of theming. It was more about like, okay, configure this view to not have any wrappers, and then configure this block to use this class, and then bam, it worked just how I needed it to. So that was really, really fun to do. Hey, look, it's advertising Drupal, migrating to Drupal 8. Check that out. How did it know? We've got a little layout problem. We'll fix that.
You know what you've been searching for, Wilbur.
That's my machine.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's that website. I'm really proud of this one. I think it looks beautiful. It's not yet on backdropcms.org in the showcase section. I'll probably put it there soon.
Right. It sounds like this one, the number of the features, like that we might expect to be a module in this case, came from that.
The theme.
The theme.
Yeah,
Where did the theme come from?
Theme Forest.
Did you pay for it?
It was like $15. You paid for it, but it was ridiculously affordable. It was the kind
Just a
of,
one-time fee.
yeah,
It's an HTML, CSS, right?
Yeah.
You have to-
and JavaScript.
It's not for Drupal.
Well, they had a Drupal version, but we did not want it. It came with like a million features, and he already had all the content. So you can't, like, that would make sense if you were starting a new site. But if you already have all of your content and all your content types, trying to make it fit into the Drupal features wasn't going to
What's
work.
it called? Theme Forest?
Theme Forest.
That is a little secret that you can just go for the HTML templates. Everybody always looks for WordPress templates. That's what I do.
Yeah.
I look at.
There's a lot more HTML templates because anyone who's making a theme for something else can make an HTML template pretty easily, and then they can sell both. So
When I first started doing Drupal, I didn't realize how, my approach to theming was always to create CSS to match the markup from Drupal, as opposed to, altering the markup through templates and other things and inserting classes to match the theme. I never had a reason to do that. And Wilbur and I did an overnight website challenge once, where we worked with themers that knew nothing about Drupal. They were just giving us CSS, and we had to force the site to display that CSS. And I never really quite understood, it took me a long time to understand the value of that. And I think that's what you're doing here, right?
Yeah.
Because you're taking or existing CSS rather than, making that fit the background markup. You're having altering the way background generates the markup.
yeah, and it's much easier to alter backdrop markup from the user interface. Whereas with Drupal, when I did this, there was a lot of like overriding so many template files because I couldn't get access to the part of the page I wanted to change.
But then you did a write-up on kind of how you did that on your website.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think it also says like, I'll make a video, and I haven't yet. But there's a little bit of write-up of the process of which parts of the template go where and how to put it together, what you need to remove. Because Drupal and Backdrop include jQuery, every one of these themes usually also includes jQuery, so making sure you're not adding it twice, 2 different versions, stuff like that. This is another site. This one did have a custom design. I don't know if you want bootfitters to know your location. I'll just block it for now. So this was one of the first websites I did in Backdrop. It was my first big client site. I'd done a bunch of my own little pet projects before this, but this one was the first one. It came from Drupal 6. This guy, Brian, hired me a number of years ago to help with his Drupal 6 website. His experience is mostly with WordPress before that. And so we had a Drupal 6 site that didn't have views on it. I hadn't seen that in quite a while. And he was like, I wish there was an easier way to make listings. And I'm like, oh, let me show you this world. And so I set up views, and he's very technical. And so I was able to show him the back end too and be like, this is how you use it. And he was like, oh, this is amazing. And so then he left Drupal and went back into WordPress. I mean, he still had the same site he was taking care of, but then on all of his other WordPress sites, he's trying to put views on. And there are there are plugins for WordPress that try to make views, but it doesn't work because they don't have a data structure that you can query efficiently. So it just slows everything way down, and it gets really, and he keeps coming to me and going, oh my gosh, the Backdrop site is so fast compared to all my WordPress sites. And I'm like, well, there's a reason for that. So
Projects like that for the next couple of years.
yeah. So this I put together before we had Bootstrap layouts in core. It was before we had responsive drop-down menus. It was very early. Backdrop 1 or 2, I think, had just come out when we got started on this. So a lot of it has sort of that custom solution Tim mentioned, like before the easy things were there, you had to do it the hard way. This site's already doing a lot of things kind of the hard way. But it was still really great for him because what he was trying to do is put together boot reviews. So this company specializes every fall. They get all of the new boots from all of the ski boot manufacturers, and they take them to the slopes, and they have hundreds of people test them. And they get all of the testers to write little reviews of what they thought of each boot. And so then if you want to buy ski boots, you come to this website, you figure out what your preferences are and what boots might be good for you. And then you go and only have to try a handful of them to figure out which one you want. And every boot review, let's see, just pull up some here. Every boot review has a ton of data associated with it. So if we look at this Fisher My Cruiser powered by vacuum boot review. Did I click on that? No, there we go. You can see it has some basic information that all boots have, like a model year category, width, a flex index, whether it's recommended for seniors or not, and a price. But there's a whole bunch more information about each boot too, if you look at the detailed specs. And so this, again, is the kind of thing where every single one of these things is a field. He wanted them to be searchable. And that's something that's super hard to do on his WordPress sites. And so having a system like Backdrop where you can add any number of fields, he adds fields all the time. He can add them into the view. He can add them into the exposed filters, gives him a kind of power and control over what he wants to have on his sites. So that was pretty fun. Let's see. I think we did the gallery here, maybe like very early. I don't think there's only one boot here, but I don't think Flex Slider was ready when we launched it. I might have done a bunch of work on Flex Slider for this particular project. We did something really fun with the comments where they don't have regular people coming to their site and adding comments, but they did have this need for adding tester comments to each boot review. And the comments came in 2 flavors. They were either, good or bad, kudos or caveats. And so what we ended up doing is making it so that he could do all of the data import first while people are doing all of the testing. And then after the testing, he wanted people to come and import comments. And so rather than having comments be fields on the reviews, which is what you might have originally thought because they're all kind of associated, we just reused the comment module in a content holding fashion rather than a comment holding fashion so that he could have some people whose job was only to add comments. So if you log into this website and you're an editor, you come to this page, you have a comment form right below here that says what kind of comment is it, kudo or caveat, and then do you have a tester that referenced it, and you can node reference the tester, which is what this does. And then you just hit submit and it shows up on the page in the kudos kavos comment section. So it's a normal Drupal backdrop comment, but it doesn't look anything like a normal Drupal backdrop comment because we wanted them to serve a sort of a different purpose here. But it made the data entry really easy because you could have some people whose job was initial bulk import of all of this boot detail. And then you could have a separate set of people that was after all of that's in, come back and add all of the comments when we get all the reviews. So that was kind of a fun rework of an unintended architecture. Worked really well. I think that's all that's exciting about this site. How much time do we have? Should I do other sites?
Well, it's about 3:30. We want to do the sort of the outreach and or the community stuff. I think we should spend a little bit of time on the community stuff.
Okay. Maybe both. Oh.
Right. maybe we should move on to that.
Okay. One thing really quickly, if I can get the site to load. I have a nonprofit that I am the president of the board on at the moment, and they really needed an easier way to take money from people. This is pretty common in like the nonprofit world. And they have a lot of things where people need to like sign up, but also pay them. And so what we ended up doing is setting up a web form using a web form Stripe integration with a Stripe module so that you can just add a like dollar amount field to any web form. And then when you get to the bottom of the web form, there's a pay button, which will, using JavaScript, allow people to enter their credit card data and send it directly to Stripe. So we don't have to have any credit card payment information touch our servers at all, which is also something they were really concerned about, is having PCI compliance and what kind of risks are they going to be taking if they're processing that data themselves. So this is a very simple website in terms of the content that's on it. Where's the sign up form? It's right here. But it has a sort of complex set of requirements. It also has sort of a point system integration that's pretty cool. But so yeah, here's just a normal web form. It takes all the information they need. And then at the bottom, it's like pay with, here's a dollar amount, and then pay with credit card. And if you go to pay, well, these fields weren't required. It would open up a little modal and let you enter your credit card details. So that was kind of cool. Okay, that's it for show and tell. Let's stop this. Dink. And then we will move on to community stuff.
Right, we have. Any questions, comments from anybody?